Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table, sit and drink with Cain and Abel, to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general facts. The deserts are all spreading out. I've seen rivers that have begun to drown. Miles and miles of heated seas, no hospitality. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. People under every rock, factories that never stop, greed and hunger and despair, cities lost in yellow air, canyons deep and mountains grow, diamond mines lost in endless snow, hillsides full of misplaced treasure, rules we can't seem to remember, words get lost on the telephone, wilderness without a home. Holy mountain, holy sea, holy infant we hold tenderly. Go down, Moses, go down slow. 100 years in the desert with no place to go. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table, sit and drink with Cain and Abel, to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general facts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Non-Dual Roundtable discussion. I hope you're having a wonderful start to the spring season and you're enjoying your holidays. And while we wait for people to trickle in, I wanted to take a moment to like and subscribe, check out our mailing list, maybe even share this stream. It really helps, and we want to grow this thing, so we deeply appreciate it. So again, hope you're having a great start to the season. And welcome to our 5th edition of the Non-Dual Roundtable, where we A panel of Jason Schulman's senior teachers and students discuss the interface between ideas about non-duality and our daily lives. We are excited to be here with you. So, as you may or may not know, the Foundation for Non-Duality is dedicated to making the principles of non-dual thinking and practice, as articulated by Jason Schulman, available to the greater public for the purpose of transforming the consciousness of individuals in order to help alleviate suffering in the world. These principles and their practical application focus on the unitive connection between personal and transcendent consciousness as the foundational basis for change and healing. Jason Schulman sees the study of non-duality, especially in its practical applications in everyday living, as part of the healing of the human soul. The aim is to live our lives as both healing and healthy individuals who are aware of and connected to the entire web of being, which includes the totality of who we are. Living the totality of our being means including all of our human parts in our awareness, from our great courage and longing to connect to our many imperfections that work against these aims. So Jason Schulman's teachings are based on kindness toward the self and others. And the work of the foundation is to actualize this kindness in everyday life. If you don't know Jason Schulman, over the past 40 years of teaching, he has worked to reconcile the deistic or relative paths of liberation with the consciousness of Buddhism and other non-theistic paths to create a truly non-dual path of healing, one that does not exclude any aspect of reality. His work emphasizes the healing of the personal ego and its rightful place in any path that seeks liberation from ignorance and the awakening of compassion. It also seeks to bring the human world with its imperfections into alignment with the realization of transcendent awareness. In this way, we develop a conscious awakening to the sacredness of every sentient being and every time-bound moment. Now, before we dive into the conversation, I'm going to lead us through a short meditation. So why don't you sit back, make yourself comfortable. Your feet should be flat on the floor. You don't have to be sitting erect. You can be leaning. It's okay. And close your eyes for a moment, and I'll take you through this meditation. It's called Inviting Everything In. So begin just by being with your breathing. Be with your breath as it is. Don't get caught up in thinking your breath should be deeper or more regular or more even or better in some way. Your breathing just as it is what's keeping you alive, and that's sufficient. So just be with your breathing for a moment. So your intention in this meditation is to invite everything in. Begin with the sounds that are around you right now. Maybe you hear the sounds of other people talking in the background. Maybe a car horn or a siren. Maybe the wind or a bird. Invite all of those sounds in. We want them to be with you. We want them to be here. Now, invite all of the parts of yourself to be with you right now. The small, frightened parts, the courageous parts, the lazy parts, the devoted parts. Actually say to yourself in your mind, you, the one who forgets to be kind to yourself, be here with me. Come in. You, the selfish one, be here. You, the one who is argumentative, be here. You, the one who remembers God from time to time, be here too. You, the one who forgets God from time to time, be here as well. Invite all of the parts of yourself and all of the parts of your environment to be present right now in this moment. Whatever comes into your mind or heart, whether it's a difficulty or whether it's a great insight, it doesn't matter. They are all treated equally. Invite them in, and let's be with all of this for a few moments. And you can gently bring yourself back to the space, back to your room, back to this conversation. So, this is an opportunity to have a conversation about our spiritual lives. And what we want to do here today is invite your conversation as well. So there will be time for audience interaction, and we would love for you to participate with questions and comments. And this conversation today is titled The Perfect Trigger, Community as Spiritual Practice. I'm joined by Beth Almarini, Andrew Resnick, and Damon Farnham. My name is Tim Rothschild, and I will be moderating today's conversation. Jason writes in Beyond the Now, Sangha, congregation, Havora, tribe. It has been consistent throughout recorded history that a vital component of the personal spiritual journey has been its connection to the group, the relationship of the solitary seeker to his or her brothers and sisters on the path. So this question is for anybody to pick it up and run with it. Do you agree with this? How so? Any examples? Let's jump right in.
I just realized I was muted. So I was thinking back, to when I was a lot younger, and I was thinking about, for a while, I was sort of exploring my own spirituality. It was just innate. It was part of who I was. So I was reading all these things, taking classes, exploring. And then I was just remembering that there was this natural impulse to try to find people that I could talk to and explore the ideas that I was thinking about with. and they would relate. Like, so we could have a dialogue, a back and forth, like we could engage. And it was like this longing, this desire that I had to like find people that like would, they could like understand, and then they would share something and I would be like, yes, like, and this, so trying to find these people early on was this desire that I had. And I still have it. But then anyway, so that's like my little reminiscence back to kind of like this original impulse in my life of like, and it seemed very natural to look for that.
So for you, you are agreeing with it, right? It says that a community is something that brings you into relationship with others who have similar ideas, similar belief systems, but does it create any conflict?
Does it create conflict? Well, I mean, if I were honest, I would say that just about every situation at certain times can create some conflict. So yes, it does create conflict. And maybe like early on when I had some idealized version of what spiritual community could be like, I thought that like it was supposed to just be harmonious and lovely all the time. Like you connect and everybody's open-hearted and it's beautiful. But the reality is that conflict, difference, and all the different ways that can show up seems to be a bit baked in. Like you can't just get rid of it because you might be on the same page about something bigger.
So for me, if you kind of consider that the spiritual path is really about becoming more human and more of who we actually are, you really can't do that alone. It's hard to be human by yourself. I mean, that's why things like solitary confinement are so terrible, right? Because you're alone, you're in your own kind of bubble. You've got nothing to reflect back to yourself. And so I always thought really that the best kind of way to be spiritual was to go off and be a hermit or something. And I was disabused of that notion pretty quickly. But yeah, you really need other people. So yeah, I agree with that totally.
Okay, I got a few things to say that are all, we'll cover a bunch of things. One, there's the kind of intellectual idea of it, which I, really agree with. In Buddhism, I know that, when you take refuge, which is when you kind of officially say, I'm going to do this thing, you take refuge in three different things: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha being the community. And that's just as important as the teachings and the teacher. You're saying, I'm going to do this with this community, and it is built in. And I know that, like Damon and Beth said, I definitely feel that longing to connect with others around this. I'll also say, and this is very much part of the essay, that, having gone through, the school for non-dual Kabbalistic healing, I spent pretty much every day in there completely triggered out of my mind by everybody in the class. And I wanted nothing more than to just have like one teacher and me, and have the teacher tell me, and just learn in that kind of more solitary way. A lot of that was just out of my own discomfort of being in a room full of people who just really kind of hit all my buttons. And I think at that time, there wasn't enough space in myself to actually be with those triggers. And so I was very much reactive to them. And so in kind of retrospect, I can really see the value of it. But yeah, it can be very, very, very difficult to be in community in that way for many people. And I think I just want to add that I think like everything, there's a natural rhythm to times when actually the solitary thing might be what is needed in a moment, and then rejoining the community is might be the next best step. So it's having that community there, I think, is imperative, and at the same time knowing how to kind of participate in it, and when that's calling and when maybe your own inward time is calling too. So yes, plus a lot of complications would be my answer.
So it sounds like you've embraced community as a way to grow. How did some of those buttons that were pressed, how did that help you along your spiritual journey?
It kind of it highlighted specific issues and tendencies that I would have, that I would normally just kind of take to be who I am, and it instead illuminated them as a kind of thing that was happening relationally. So I might notice a lot of arrogance come up in a given moment, and think, oh, this person isn't understanding this. What's wrong? Like, why? I know this, and they don't. And then become aware of the way in which that actually separates me from them, and keeps me safe and keeps me elevated. And it took me getting triggered in that way, like, I don't know, 7 to 9 million times to start to realize, hey, like, what is going on here right now? As opposed to actually just kind of believing the narrative that might that was saying in that moment. And there are many other ways, but I think that's a kind of an easy example of. I think there's a lot that we just say is like who we are and take for granted, as and don't necessarily become curious about. And I think that the relational space, especially in a community, the same shit's going to get triggered over and over and over again until you actually look at it. And that's part of the gift of it, is that it's not going to magically disappear or resolve itself.
So if I could say, Andrew, it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that being triggered in community wasn't a bad thing. This wasn't like for a while it was a problem.
At the time, it wasn't. I mean, definitely not a pleasant thing. At the time, it was a very frustrating thing. And in retrospect, years later, I can see, oh, actually, there was a lot of value to that. But I also think
so. It actually helped you grow. So like the trigger that the community brought, like hit you, like that actually helped you in your personal transformation, which is why you were there to begin with.
For sure, yes. And I want to add that, like, part of the trickiness of the whole thing is, you get triggered and it's very easy to kind of bypass it and say, oh, well, this is all here for my growth, and I'm, thank you. What a wonderful teacher you are to me. And like, that's a fantastic way to actually bypass the discomfort of feeling the thing in the moment. And so, doing that particular dance is kind of has been a tricky thing, for me, but as long as it's not being used in the moment as a way to bypass the actual bodily discomfort of what's happening, but actually, like there are many moments I remember in the class where I was like, man, and I would say out loud, like, I'm so fucking triggered right now. Like, what do I do? And then it's actually just can you be with it? Without necessarily meaning that, like, in that moment you have to find the lesson or the value or the the reward, but just trusting that, like, actually it's okay for this thing to be here right now in this moment, and it's uncomfortable, and that's okay. But yes, that's completely. There's been a lot of growth through that, a ton.
I just want to make a comment about what you just said. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Because I think it's a great distinction that I think can like slip past, and I just want to like point at it real quick. And it's, Andrew, when you just said it wasn't so much about like the lesson or like what you learned. It's very easy in spiritual circles to make it like something hard happens and then like, what did I learn from it? And it's like, and it becomes this thing.
Exactly.
And it sounded like you were talking about it, like you were almost letting yourself be kind of seasoned.
That's
ripened
uncomfortably
the experience.
seasoned.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I love that because it's easy to like. It's easy in spiritual circles. It's very easy to like skip right past that.
Exactly. I think that's exactly it. It's very easy to. I mean, I was going to say we, but I'll speak for myself. I hate discomfort so much that, you know, when I'm being seasoned or marinated or what numerous cooking metaphors can apply, but when you're in that space, it's very your mind is looking for any way out of it, which is completely normal. But to actually say, okay, mind, I hear you. Can I just be in this process of being seasoned right now without knowing what the outcome of that is going to be or the value or the lesson? Trusting that, having faith that growth is happening, but because you're in it, you gotta do it. You're in that process and kind of surrendering to that. That's a great distinction, Damon. Thanks for highlighting that.
Beth, what were you going to say? I'm curious.
I'm going to tell on myself and say that a prior spiritual community, I was all about that, you know, the lesson or the, oh, look, this is teaching me how to be more patient. Or this person is hurtful. Well, this is teaching me forgiveness. And I was just so wrapped up in that until, you know, you kind of do get to a point where when you don't address things, they come out in a horrible way. And yes, I realized that I was not learning really much at all about forgiveness or patience or whatever, but I was learning a whole lot about how to, you know, how to abandon myself, how to suppress feelings, and how to, you know, just act like it's all okay. None of which are really helpful lessons on the spiritual path. So, needless to say, I left that community and figured, spirituality is not for me. Let me go. I'll go do something else. So yeah, it's a bad. What habits? Well, it's a bad thing to get to, you know, become an expert at.
Well, if I can just add one thing to that, I'm also, I don't want to say, you know, individually, like, don't look for the lesson or don't look for the value, because I think it's the most natural thing, especially in these moments, to kind of to look for that. But it's more of like a softening around that and knowing that you will look for it, and then can you gently turn back to the actual experience in that moment. You know, it's so human to. I'm not saying go join a spiritual community, which is spiritual bypassing everything and is unhealthy. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, in relationship to like oneself, like when you see yourself doing that, of course you're doing that. Can you be kind to that and then maybe turn back?
Right. Well, it's a way to keep yourself safe, isn't it? And especially those of us who might have grown up in, you know, with a lot of conflict, it is a fantastic way to avoid that, right? To push it all away, to say, well, I'm not going to engage, you know, with this person who's making me crazy. I'm not going to engage with myself over it. I'm just going to, you know, push it all away and make nice. So that is a real, that's a challenging thing to learn. And there's no other way to learn that. than in a community.
Yeah, and actually, to add on to that, I think ideally, in if you're in a community of people who are consciously doing this, then you have kind of more willing partners to to say to kind of to have at the end of the day, it's just kind of honest conversations with. Um,
Right.
yeah, I remember I have a memory that just came up of many years ago. I was in a different community, and um, one of the members was talking to me afterwards about the music that I do, and he was um, he was kind of coming on very strong about it, and for my own various stuff, I was kind of uncomfortable in the moment with engaging in that way, but I was being very, very polite and very, very nice. And I was just kind of like pretending and hiding my own discomfort. And then afterwards, his wife, who saw the interaction, was like, you can tell him that, you're feeling uncomfortable and that it was a lot for you. Um, and I was like, huh? And it was such a new concept. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I could actually, like, there's room for honesty and conflict, and she was like, yeah, he can handle his own reaction. That kind of really, really stuck with me in that moment. And so now he's never allowed to talk to me again.
This is great.
Jason,
I'll
go for it.
yeah. I'm gonna just throw in a quote that Andrew just made me think of. This community of sandpaper idea, part of the chapter where he talks about the first is that each person is completely 100% responsible for their own response. And I love that. It's like I'm not responsible. I care about you, but I'm not responsible for how I may make you feel or like how you may respond. Even if another person has done something incorrect or downright wrong, our response is our responsibility. And then, of course, the second is that things must always be worked out and not papered over in a false hope of just having some idealized happy home. So I really like this idea because it's like, especially for people like, if we have like a codependency sort of tendency, or like, we want people to like us, like, I don't know, I might be able to relate to these things personally pretty well. Mm-hmm. But like the idea of this means that like, I get to like let myself off the hook for being responsible for how somebody else may feel because of something that I may do or say. I know that I'm committed to being 100% responsible for myself, and I can trust that everybody else that I may interact with, they at least have that intent. We may fail sometimes, and we may like not be able to do it in the moment, but everybody else in the community at least has that as their goal and their hope for themselves. And then somehow, as we work through that in our relationship and our conversations or our conflicts, it's like something that I can trust.
It makes it safer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what you're speaking
it helps me like heal this place in me that's so hard to heal in regular daily interactions, because it's like, it's what I'm used to. I'm used to interacting with people in a very certain kind of way. And it's like, it makes it safer so that I can kind of come out of my box a little bit and like let myself experiment with being like more of a living human being, a little bit less confined by habit.
I know it was a huge relief for me when I first explored Jason's ideas of taking 100% responsibility, just like you said, because I don't know about you guys, but I grew up having to take a lot of responsibility pretty early, for crazy adults around me and how unsafe I felt. So one of the things that having a spiritual community has really helped, even speaking to it as sandpaper, is it lets me, like you said, come out of my shell. It helps me explore the historical constraints, all the different ways that I was wounded and hurt in my life. It gave it a different, safer place where I could actually start to have a conscious relationship with it and explore what it's like to be in community with a group of people that are all trying to do the same. And that's a part of the safety. It's like we're all trying to do the same thing here. And so it's inevitable because we're all unhealed and we're all imperfect. We're going to be sandpaper for each other. And that's the point. And it's a wonderful change in how we can live our lives and move through the world. And it's also, for me, sometimes it's shocking to leave the community and then to go back into the larger world and experience what that's like. It's like a whole different version of leaving the mountaintop and coming back down into the community. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, being with people who understand and accept and know that they are imperfect beings and working to heal themselves. To be with people like that, like you said, it's the safest place to be, the absolute safest place to be. So being committed to that kind of honesty is a wonderful thing.
Jason says a lot.
Go
Go on.
No, I was
Sure.
just going to say, just even the way it's worded, our response is our responsibility. It's a nice, like, it's a nice keychain to kind of like bring around with, you know, oneself every day. And I mean, it's a good distinction between the kind of the safety of the spiritual community and the kind of more day-to-day world. But I'm curious, you know, for everyone here, in terms of that idea of your response is your responsibility, how does that translate when you're in the kind of everyday world and you're working with people who aren't necessarily that you're in a spiritual community with? You know, do you also think that should apply? I know I do, but I'm curious, you know, for everyone here, like when you're not in that kind of safe space, how much of your response is your responsibility?
I mean, 100%. How much of it? I mean, it doesn't mean that I do that 100% every
exactly.
time. Like I will fail, but in theory, it's 100%. You know, it's like, I mean, I guess I could share this. It came to mind. I don't know if this is helpful for people to hear, but like, you know, for instance, when I get triggered by my wife, you know, lo and behold, it happens. And, you know, so I could, on the one hand, you know, try to demand that she be different or that she do something different or that it's like, it's her and it's her fault. And, you know, and you get into that. So what I try to do is I actually will try to still stay in relationship with her and engage with her, but still hold somehow the space in me that this response is my responsibility. And I'll say to her, like, I'm really angry right now, and I don't want to take it out on you, and I don't really know how to be with this. Like, I know that I'm being triggered by you, and I know this is me, but it's like I don't really know how to. And so this is the kind of way that I'll talk with her about it. Instead of like, you made me angry, you did this. It's like, I'm a mess right now. I know it's me. I'm holding on to it, and I want to stay in relationship with you. And man, this is hard. So that's kind of how I try to do it in that situation.
It's beautiful.
Really
I think we can all benefit from that. It's so hard, and I'm with you, Damon. I am constantly awakening to the ways that I demand people to be different, and I get angry, and I rage against the machine, you know. And it's like, I love how Jason says, you know, the Buddha isn't the Buddha because he's some super enlightened being that is risen above everything. He's the Buddha because he's awake to his delusions, and that's what we're doing as community, right? We're offering a safe space, hopefully with kindness, to be able to explore our imperfections and our craziness. And the fact that the more and more we become awake to our craziness, which we all have, the more saner we actually become. So it's like a paradox. It's like it's accepting the way it is, right? We're all screwed up and we're all wonderful at the same time. And if we can give a place for that in community, it, in my opinion, it accelerates that, because there's that inevitable bumping into each other left and right. And it's like, it's an accelerated process of being able to really wake up to the ways that we're actually causing these problems for ourselves and others over and over again. And then you have to learn, like Damon said, you have to learn how to communicate differently, right? How to take care of yourself first, and then be able to extend out a hand that says, help me.
I have this impulse. I want to bring something up, and I want to see and we don't have to go deeply into it, but I've been thinking about it as we've been getting ready for this roundtable. And it's this idea, or this. It's basically, it's this thing that seems to be happening right now, in politics, in media, and a lot of these areas where there's this movement towards basically getting rid of anything that is different than me. Mm-hmm. So we used to be able to have a lot more dialogue and discourse, and we used to be able to have room in ourselves for difference, even though I may absolutely disagree with you. Somehow we could have stayed in relationship. Now it's this tendency that people are passing laws, that are completely eliminating parts of the population. It's like this idea that everything needs to basically be like me, or it's not okay and I'm not okay. Mm-hmm. And this movement in this direction is freaking me out. Like, people are getting smaller and smaller and more fragile. And it's like they're having so much less play in the wheel to be able to be with different people and be with different ideas. And I'm just like, what is going on? We're not going to solve this, but it's been on my mind a lot.
I don't know. I mean, we have 23 minutes. I feel like we could solve this.
Very good. Go.
Damon, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've been just with this sense of distress. Every time you read something, it's as you're saying, let me get rid of this, let me get rid of that, but I haven't been able to articulate it like you just did, right? That people have just so much less play, less room to move. And this just narrowing and narrowing and narrowing of what's acceptable it's scary. I don't know how to solve it. Maybe Andrew and Tim can, but everybody just kind of wants to surround themselves with a tribe that's exactly like them. So then what happens to any sort of growth, any sort of change, right? If everybody's the same, well, there's no sandpaper, so to speak. And you just get more and more narrow, which is why, there's been plenty of people that I wished were not in a particular spiritual community. But ultimately, it's something to be grateful for, right? Because it changes you. It gives you room to grow. And that's just so important.
Yeah. I mean, I've of course zero solutions. I do think a large part of it is recognizing that a lot of it are ways of looking for safety. Mm-hmm. And whether that's safety from another group or that's safety from the perceived wrath of God, they are ways of looking to secure oneself, and especially and it's a reaction to feeling unsafe, and it's kind of the knee-jerk reaction. So I think starting with that understanding might lead to new avenues of thinking about it, because I think everyone kind of, it's that unmet need of, I don't feel safe right now. How do I create a sense of safety? Oh, you're like me, you're like me, you're like me. Let's band together and we'll be safe together. And so I think that that's a big part of what's happening, and how to work with that. I don't know, maybe that's another topic we can opine on and not figure anything out.
Well,
I
you're
think
making me.
I think it brings up compassion. Like Andrew, when you said that, like to me, it's like, okay, so it makes me feel more compassionate because I can understand what's going on in the internal world of people who may need their world to be much smaller to feel okay. So it's still, I still have all my thoughts and feelings about it, but I'm like, okay, that's, they just want to be okay. Well, I just want to be okay too. Like I know that place. I have the same exact need.
Well, I'm going to put out there another thing, because I completely agree with you, Damon, and I completely agree with you, Andrew, that that this is about people trying to be safe. I mean, this is one thing that I think Jason had said when I was taking the 4-year non-dual Kabbalistic training classes, that after I heard it, I was like, okay, well, I can just leave now. I know everything I need to know. And he said, people do what they do because it makes them feel safe. And that applies to, so many things in relationships, so many, your daily kind of interactions. And I think the compassion is really the basis of kindness. And so I believe all of those things. And I also am less inclined to be compassionate with people who are harming other people in their attempt to be safe. And I know, Damon, you weren't saying you had compassion for that either, but I really just feel I want to put that out there, because that is, that's just so hard to work with and hard to hold both of those things. So no solutions, just a comment.
Thanks, Beth. I totally agree.
It speaks to, you're making me think of sort of a turn that we all have to make at one point when we start to wake up to the ways that we're hurting other people unconsciously or otherwise. And it's like when you join a community, it's making me think of, there's a time when my dad was actually hit by a car. He was thrown many feet and he broke a lot of different bones in his body. He's okay now, actually, miraculously, he's fine. But I remember when he was going through his rehab, how his body kept wanting to contract. Everything kept wanting to go in and protect itself and get tight and rigid. And so he had to spend a lot of his time doing the thing that was counter to logic. And he had to start to spread his arms up to stretch his chest, and it was uncomfortable. And he had to make an effort, and he had to will himself to show up every day to do this. And that's a lot of what we do in spiritual communities. We have to make that effort. And it's so difficult, right, to continue to show up and do and live life this way. It's very difficult to have enough patience with people that are hurting each other to be able to see what it's made of, like what you were saying, Beth, right? There's always some underlying thing that's driving the hurt that people have. So that's what it's making me think about, how we're always, how important it is to have a group of people to root you on, to be your cheerleader in a certain sense, because we need to continue to effort in that way.
That was great. I was just thinking right before you said that, Tim, I was just thinking about how, the other aspect or another aspect of spiritual community is like that you can show up as you are. And the relaxation, like what a blessing that is, that there's a place that it's safe to just be who you are. And some days maybe that's great and insightful and open-hearted, and some days you feel like Eeyore and you're a mess, and like, but like there's a place where you feel safe that like however you are, you can show up. And there's people who, because that's their goal for themselves as well, they can be with you. They can receive you exactly how that is. And what an incredible blessing it is to give yourself an opportunity to have that in your life.
Go on.
Go ahead. Oh,
I was
sorry.
just gonna.
Yeah, you went.
No, you first,
go
and
for
then we're. No, I'm just gonna.
I was
I'm
going to
gonna
go into a whole nother realm.
Really? So okay,
Yeah,
let
go for
me
it.
jump in, just so we have time, because we have a question from Ben, and I want to bring it in. And some of this, it's a little bit specific to some of what we learn in the 4-year program at A Society of Souls. But the question is, how do you all sit with being fully responsible for yourself while acknowledging that we still need to give half back? And I think this is referencing, is it called Giving Half Back Bridge? That story? Is that what it's called?
I think it was a specific practice that, or exercise even, that we worked with, of kind of feeling a certain type of maybe urgency around something and then giving half back. Not necessarily not to another person, but just, and I could be giving up an incorrect version of this, but that's my remembering of it. Just trying to sit with the question.
I think the bridge is part of the story. Like there's a water dipper and you cross the bridge and you take the water dipper and you give half back or something. So I think there is something there, Tim. But anyway, yeah. How is...
Well, it depends. Oh, sorry. It depends on what you mean by giving half back, right? Who are you giving it to? What happens to it when you give it away? I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think it applies to everything, every situation, right? Because if I'm committed to being 100% responsible for myself, that I don't know. I just don't see, like, why would you even give half of that back? What would be the point of that? Would that, I don't know. I'm struggling with the concept.
I have a thought. Like to me, it almost feels like taking responsibility, 100% responsibility, is giving half back. And what I mean by that is the impulse, initially for a lot of people, is to put it on the other. You did this to me, you made me feel this way, you've wronged me, and it's like the giving half back to me almost feels like bringing that back into myself. So, I'm playing with the analogy. It's almost like taking it back, but it's like that's what it feels like to me. It's like, because what I really want to do is just push it outside of myself to make myself feel better. Instead, I'm taking some back and I'm saying, no, I'm going to bring this into me, and I'm going to take responsibility for this.
Wow. Some of what Jason writes when he talks about community as sandpaper is he says, we start to look inside to our preferences and not outside to our judgments and beliefs. I think that's a part of the taking responsibility piece. Start to bring it back into ourselves, right? Instead of blaming what's going on out there.
Yeah. I really love
I wanted to bring up a... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Beth.
Oh, it's okay. You can interrupt me. But, I'll give half back.
Right.
I just wanted to say to Damon how much I really appreciated the way he framed that. That was really very resonant. So, thank you.
Yeah. That's I agree.
Oh, wait. And see, this is why we need community. Right? you know, where you kind of, you know, I don't know, bounce things off each other, whatever, and find something you never would have found yourself. So, okay, I'm done for now.
No, great. I think I just wanted to briefly. I was just imagining, someone stumbling on this, who might not be involved in a spiritual community, or is new to these ideas, and they hear spiritual community, and then there's an impulse of, ugh, like that sounds really culty and dangerous, actually. And that a lot of bad things have happened in a lot of spiritual communities, and I just wanted to bring that in, and what a response might be, to that. Yeah.
I was suspicious moving into this group, in this community. It took a lot of time for me to carefully include those parts of myself that just didn't trust what was going on. People were being nice to me. They were being really kind. They wanted to help. They wanted to support me. And I could, at first I couldn't take it in, because I had so many protective barriers up. So that's what that makes me think of. It's like community as relationship. And it's always going to be bringing up these parts of ourselves that have been exiled or are on guard in some way, which really limits what's possible.
But you know what? I think it is true also that you kind of do have to go into these things with your eyes wide open, and maybe with a little bit of, a sense of guarding. Because, yeah, there's been so many communities, spiritual, religious, that terrible things have happened. People have made themselves vulnerable and been taken advantage of. So yeah, it's not a thing to just run into blindly. And especially, for people maybe who are especially vulnerable, or really seeking for acceptance and needing love of community, and end up going in, not fully aware, not fully open. You still have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could say things like, if you could ask yourself questions like, does this experience help me safely open to life more? Does it help me to be in my life and in relationship with people more deeply? Does it help me open? Does it help me have stronger, healthier boundaries? Does it help me, feel more free in who I am and the expression of that? I mean, so I could say those things, right? Like, and you could sort of gauge, but then the reality is that, like with what you guys are saying, everybody comes in from a different place, and, kind of like assessing those kinds of questions may be easier said than done for a while, because you're actually going to have to bump up against those places that don't trust life. And community is going to help you do that.
Yeah. I know for me with this community, the first blood sacrifice was really difficult, but once you get to like the fourth sacrifice, it's just, it just becomes natural. I think to that point also, Damon, is skepticism encouraged, and is a different, and our difference of opinions allowed and encouraged and kind of sought out? And I think to whatever extent there's just like group think of this is the way it has to be, that's never necessary. That's not going to end up well. But when all of these differences are allowed and encouraged, and there's space for them, that's probably a decent sign that it's a safe space.
That's great.
I could see how that would be a healing for a lot of people, to be encouraged to allow that part of themselves to be present, you know? And I think the healing also leads to something Jason wrote about being able to see the abundance of human variation. You know, it's like, it's just a totally different perspective to look at the world in that way, right? Say, oh my gosh, look at all these differences, instead of sort of bracing for impact and avoiding.
I mean, back to, what you were saying, Andrew, about dissent, being allowed and encouraged and whatever. That was one thing that I did notice when I first, became involved and started taking classes. The way when people would ask questions in class, I can hardly remember a time that anybody actually gave an answer, right? As in, okay, yeah, this is what that means. This is how you have to do this, whatever. And honestly, there were times I was begging, please, just give me something to hold on to here. But that's not how it works. People, you're encouraged to kind of, think for yourself, to feel into it and what it means. So yes, that was a very different kind of way than, growing up Catholic. That kind of thing was not encouraged. So, yeah.
So we're winding down here. Any final thoughts about this topic?
Just gratefulness for me, seriously grateful for community. When I know, you guys fairly well, and we have a great community, but anytime I meet somebody that I feel there's like that kind of resonance or safety or comfort, with these things that are so part of who I am, I just feel I'm always so grateful to find and connect with people like that. I feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm not alone in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's definitely been a lot of times in my life, especially when I was younger, where that is how I felt. I felt like I was exiled on the planet and nobody thought like I did. And it's not the case.
Yeah. I think gratefulness, joy, to be able to have a group of people where you can actually be yourself, and whether that's, your most open-hearted or, your most Karen, that people love you, that there's that, I don't know, that sense of being held and of not being alone. Yeah.
Agreed.
Thinking about Jason Wright's community as sanctuary.
Right. Refuge.
Yeah.
So this seems as good a time as ever to bring this to a close. Let me just say to everybody, the Foundation for Nonduality is grateful that you all joined us today, and we would be extra grateful if you could please offer some donations, because that's how we grow and that's how we survive. If you don't do that, if you could like, subscribe, and share this work, Jason's work, we'd greatly appreciate it. So all our love, and we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table sit and drink with Cain and Abel to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general facts.